Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. I am delighted to be back. And I have missed these Gita meetups. I missed all meetups and I missed all of you folks, but I missed the Gita meetups the most. So I'm delighted to be back. And Bhakti Yoga is one of my favorite chapters. So I'm delighted to get into this. So let's start by just stepping back and looking at Bhakti Yoga. So Yogesh, could you speak a little bit or as much as you want about Bhakti Yoga?
Yes, so Bhakti Yoga. What Bhakti means is devotion. And devotion is not only love, but it is more like unconditional love. You love whereby there are no conditions put to it, or there is no that this should happen because I love you, or because I love you, you should do this for me. Everything is not conditioned. You just go into love because you love that person. So in Bhakti Yoga as well, there is this unconditional love that is talked about. And that love is focused on the other. You know, we have always known this in Indian tradition that everything is one. There's this Advaita, and we have known this theme from the whole of Gita. When we focus on ourselves, you know that yes, there is this subtle oneness between everything. The unmanifest is everywhere. So you're living out everything and focusing on the Atman within yourself. And then that Atman within yourself reflects everything outside. In Bhakti Yoga, what happens is you focus on the other, which is, would say, Krishna, the unmanifest within Krishna. And Krishna here would not say the unmanifest within me. Krishna would say, that is who I am. Yeah? So in Bhakti Yoga, focus on the other, which would be Krishna in this place. Not only on the physical forms. What would be more focusing on is the gunas that that person has. And gunas meaning the qualities the person has. Even in qualities, we have to make this distinction, whereby we're only looking at qualities that help us in the outside. We're only looking for qualities like when does he love me back, or when does he help me in my progress. Not only those qualities, because those qualities are based on you yourself again. Like you will be thinking about yourself when you're looking at those qualities in the other person. Look for more subtler qualities in the other person, whereby that person is Brahma, and that you can look into Krishna and find it almost like easily. What happens there is Krishna himself is so transparent. He's like water itself. There's nothing that is solid within Krishna. When we look at other people, yes, they have Atman within themselves. They have Brahman within themselves. But there is that veil that is always there. And we ourselves have the veil within ourselves. And we only interact with the peripheral. When we have the peripheral, we are walking from the peripheral and we interact with the peripheral of others. When we interact with Krishna, something else happens. Because Krishna is not solid in a way. He is totally watery, like liquid. Taral would say in Hindi. And he's moving everywhere. And that being everywhere, still he's at the center. You know, normally what would happen is would solidify ourselves into a character, would say, this is me. And then we'll put on faces that fit that character. If somebody wants to see me that I am honest, then I would put all the masks that I am honest and I tell the truth every time. But you see how Krishna is. He will also say that, no, I don't only talk the truth, I also tell lies at sometimes. And there's this authenticity in himself, whereby he's walking from the center, then whatever happens at the peripheral, he's okay with it. He's good to go with it because the peripheral interacts with the peripheral. And the center is always as it is, untouched. That's how Krishna is. Certainly also, if you see, Krishna's character was like that. But the authors of that time, whether you say Mahabharata or Bhagavad Purana or Vishnu Purana, when they characterize Krishna, the authors themselves also don't have a problem when they're writing it. Normally, when you're writing about such a character, you have to be like, should I write about this part or should I not write about this part? You're always trying to put a way out and make your book consistent throughout. But even the authors didn't have a problem with writing about Krishna in that fluid way. They were okay with it. So they understood Krishna as he was, and then they projected him to the world. And Krishna himself didn't write anything per se. The authors wrote about him, and in a way, that's how we know Krishna. That's how we know that the authors also knew Krishna, because to write about such an individual, such a personality, it's like if that personality was not there, it's not possible to write about it. Normally, when an author wants to write about a personality, they will put a box around that personality, and that personality cannot go beyond that box. But the personality of Krishna here is so fluid. You can't put borders to it. Totally out of borders. Now, when you're interacting with such a personality, when you're reading about that personality, because this comes in Bhakti Yoga, reading about the personality, who has reached Brahman. Not only talking about Brahman or how to reach it, but now you're talking about the personality that the person had. You're talking about Krishna. You're talking about Rama. When you're talking about the personality, in a way, yes, at first, because normally we are self-centered when we are not put into these conditions of knowing Brahma. At first, yes, we'll look at these characters that help us. We'll look at the qualities that match with ourselves. We'll look at the qualities whereby we are at par with Krishna, like Krishna could be like this. And this has happened over the time, whereby in Krishna Sampradaya, because when you go around India, you get to know about so many things about Krishna himself as well. So as Ram is, they will worship Ram as a full personality. And wherever you go, ask about Ram, they will accept each and every part of him. But there's something weird about Krishna, whereby if you go to Bal Swarupa, those who do Bal Swarupa Upasana, those will only accept the Krishna who was in Vrindavan. They will not accept the Krishna who talked about the Gita. Like, see, they only accept one part of his personality. And then those who talk about the Krishna who was in Mathura and then went to Dwarika, they would say, no, we don't want to worship the Krishna who was in Vrindavan. And he played with the gopis, and he was he took away the clothes of the gopis, or he took away the curd of the gopis and all that. So there is this distinction that is always made. But how I wish to look at it is, if the people who wrote about Krishna, the original in Mahabharata or in Bhagavad Puran or Vishnu Puran, they did not have a problem with Krishna. Like, they did not only put him in one personality. They They put him in all personalities at once. He was that fluid. And when you talk about Krishna in that fluid way, in a way, what you think about, you also transform to that in a subtle way. When you're thinking about the life of Krishna, you also become liquid. You go beyond the boundaries. It's not only talking about going beyond the boundaries that helps, but even thinking about, like, how did Krishna go beyond the boundaries? How was his life like beyond the boundaries? Even that helps you. Those qualities slowly get into you. And also another thing to talk about Krishna is, one is his personality, as we have already seen. Another is all the charitras he did, Leela he did. And normally would say that it's an Leela is not like action. It's not karma. We'd never say Krishna did karma, but we'd always say Krishna did Leela or he did charitra. Now, Leela in direct English translation means a play. And the way Krishna just plays around, even when he's talking about the Gita or he's at war, not only at the time when he was young, but even when he's an adult, yes, there's that serious part of him where those things that are supposed to be serious are serious. Yes. But then even in that seriousness, there is not that, like, there's not that sadness, there's not that misery, all that is not there. He's still that playful, and that smile is always on his face. And all the radiance is always there. Even though he's at war, he has all this radiance on his face, and his body just shows it all. Whereas any other character we talk about, when they're at war, would always be thinking, and in a way would always be thinking about the other in misery and strain and all that. While Krishna, there's nothing like that. So when you're looking at that, or when you have some misery within your life, or you have to get past something in your life, that helps, because you see how Krishna did it, and you see how you are dealing with it. It's like, you could put it like this: Krishna is is your better self. Yeah, is that which you want to reach to, is the Brahma that you want to reach to. How he acted it out helps you, not only at the peripheral, because normally that's what people will take from the Leelas of Krishna. Not only at the peripheral, but from the center to the peripheral, how he acts out. Because when you know Krishna, you know that he doesn't act only at the peripheral, he acts from the center. When you look at all his Leelas, you get the concept, not just logically, but out of life, like in action. And that concept in action helps more. You know how to get all through life. You know how to get to know what Brahman is practically rather than just logically. We can talk about Brahman the whole day, but still you don't get the concept. When you experience it, and when you get it from a person who has experienced it, it's really easy now. You can grasp it. And then where it becomes easier is when you get to stay with that person and you get to know how he does all his actions, how he goes through his day. When you get to know that, there is this subtle confidence that you also get, whereby I can also do this. And there is also this story whereby there was this Shishya who went to the ashrams, like he went to the school where the guru was teaching Dhanur Vidya, which is bow and arrow. The guru would always say that act like you've never acted. And the Shishya would take that as, I should act like I should act my best out. Yeah, that's fine when you look at the words that the guru used or the teacher used. Now, the guru would always say, no, this is not acting like you've not acted, like you've never acted. And the shishya doesn't understand it, because to take that logically, it will be by your past experiences. You'll only put your past experiences in front and project something larger. But the teacher was talking about something beyond his past experience. And that he realized at his last day, on his last day, whereby he was just sitting around, and the guru was teaching other students now, because it was his last day and he had to leave after that. But the guru had told him that you have not yet reached there where I wanted to put you. And then certainly when the guru is teaching the other shishyas now, the guru just takes the arrow out of the turni and he puts it on the bow. And then he put, just like as if he's not acting at all, as if the guru himself is not there. And he just hits the spot. And then the shishya certainly realizes that this is what the guru has been telling me all time. Not that I have to act my best out. Yes, that is part of it. But then I have to act like I have never acted, like I am not there. And that is the essence of action. And, normally would feel like, logically, could we get it? For the shishya, the main part was looking at the guru and how he teaches and how he acts it out. While he was doing the action, he was not looking at the guru, how he was doing the action. He was focused on his action. But when he sat aside, when he was looking at the guru teaching the other students, then he realized that, and he saw that this is how the guru is acting. This is how I should act. And then the shishya came up to the guru and also took the bow and arrow in his hands. And he pointed it and shot the arrow. At that point, because when the guru has reached a level, he can see when the shishya has also reached. So at that time, the guru said, yes, now you know how to act. So not everything can be gotten through our logic, because our logic is based on our past, and that's how our mind works. It's not a problem in a way. We should know how our mind acts out, because it acts from the past, and we put a lens of the present right now, and then it projects into the future what we want it to project, what we think from the past, and then we project it into the future. What happens in these subtle realizations with being with an enlightened person, or with being with a person who has reached, in a way, this is bhakti yoga, being with that person. Yeah, you're looking at his gunas, you're looking at his qualities, you're looking at his characteristics, what make him up, not only logically but practically, how he works it out. And in that way, you get the full essence. You get to know what he is saying, not only through the words, but through the actions, and through the love that he also shows in his actions. Then another aspect of bhakti yoga I would also like to talk about is the bhakti yoga of what we know about today. There is a murti, and then you pay reverence to the murti. You bow down to the murti. There is worship to the murti. One thing that should be noted is there is this bhakti yoga that is prevalent in India today. And there is an essence to it that was put back in the days. Not every experiment values its essence. so much. Sometimes you get stuck to the peripheral, and that happens with every religion or every philosophy everywhere. That's a commonplace. Now, what we need to know is what was the essence of Bhakti Yoga at the time that it was introduced within philosophy. And it is made part of the basic philosophy. In India, philosophy is not only logic or how do you get to the truth using the mind, but it integrates everything. Like yoga will say, use your body as well to get to the truth. Use your concentration as well to get to the truth. And Bhakti would say, whatever you have in front of you, because Brahma is within everything, there's nothing void of Brahma. What you have in front of you, even if it's a murti, even if it's an idol, first, the expression you'll have is just a stone. It's a stone. But there's this subtle experience that you have. If you can even see the Brahman within a stone, something that is lifeless, then it's really easy to see the Brahman within any other person or any other living being. Really easy. If you can surrender in such totality towards the idol, towards the murti, then you can certainly totally surrender to existence, to reality itself. Like, surrender. Sorry, is there this background noise? Is it prominent?
It's a little bit, but it's not a problem at all. Go ahead.
Okay, or maybe if I could stop for 5 minutes, because this is going to go on for only 5 minutes.
Sure. Then let me do one thing. There is a poem, there is a song that I wanted to share with you. This is a song about Sri Krishna. Okay, because Sri Krishna is not just the center; it is how the center reflects in the periphery and in all its myriad forms. Okay, so this is the most beautiful song that I discovered this time on my trip. So this is my present for you from India. Okay, this is a song about Sri Krishna. Okay, this is a Marathi song, so I'm going to read it. I'm not going to sing it. I'm going to read it and I'm going to translate it for you. So this is a poet. It's a beautiful poem. This poet compares Krishna to a peacock feather. Now, if you've seen a peacock feather, right, you look at it, it seems blue. But you change it slightly and all kinds of colors appear. Okay, so that's the thing. She says, Azuna tarate drushti pudati. So te morase pisan nire. So what it is saying is that still this image of Krishna, even after closing my eyes, that image shimmers, it actually stays in my eye. Is imagining Krishna as a peacock feather. Zira miratea rangase garuda azuna mala purate nakare. So what it means is that this feather is producing this enchanting shimmering of colors that I cannot really grasp. So there is this, it's a very definite feather right in front of me, but what it is and how it is functioning, I do not know. It is a feather, but that's what it, that's the impact. Navala paricha lila tyacha bhasasa to hotaka. Ever new lila. So he is playing in the world, and there are these ever new play that he's engaging in. Tya avinashi mulapana se rahasya purate nakare. He's saying is that this eternal, everlasting mulapana, childhood. This is like the eternal childhood that he has in him. I do not know the secret of it. Totar hota gopa sakha ki taruna priyakara hota. He was a friend and he was a lover. Dhita kiti to lokapriya kiti. He was bold and he was loved by all. Nitya agrani hota, and he was a leader in things. So he had all these qualities. Madhuvachani, he was sweet talking. His speech was sweet. To Murali Manohara Rupavanta Velhara. So he was enchanting to look at. Samayadnya hi to chatura janata shatrunjaya kalavaya. While being such a loving person, at the same time, he had the presence of mind at all times and the cleverness to defeat all enemies all the time. Thya nita nutana shatarupatse rahasya purate nakare. He had these 100 manifestations of characters. And I do not know the secret of how he does this. So he is all of these things in one person. To bandhu, to pati, pita, to parama mitra, to raja. He was a brother, he was a husband, he was a father, he was a devoted friend, and he was a king. To drashta, upadeshaka preraka, ashrayato sakalansa. He was a seer, he was an advisor, he was an inspirer, and he was the refuge of everybody. Sarvansati saruda tarihi totara tya palikadasa. Though he had empathy for every living thing, he was beyond it. Alipta savada nirmama sakshi sagaya sukhadukhasa. He was detached. Alipta, savada means attentive. He was detached and attentive. Nirmama, not focused on kind of periphery, any peripheral aspects of himself. Sakshi, that means he was present, he was Sagayancha Sukhadukhasa. He was a witness to all while being separate from it, while being unattached to it. He was a witness to all the play of pleasures and pain, the positive and negative emotions. Apurvatya jivana yoga se rahasya purate nakare. So I still don't understand this yoga of his life, so his way of living. Sarva manavi natyana ati sundara kele tani. He showed the beauty in every human relationship. Ayushala arthadila rasabharalya chaitanyane. He gave meaning to life by being rasabhara, full of the juice of consciousness. Kaya manave, kaya nemake dave tyala navo. Given this, what name can I give him? Kalasa hota ka swami, to hota ka deva. Was he the master of time? Was he a god? Gudha niratya astitvase rahasya hi purate nakare. So she's coming back to the metaphor of the feather. He's saying, because he was blue, the tinge of his skin was blue. So she's now bringing that back to the peacock feather, that this existence of this blueness, I cannot grasp the secret of it. So that's what I wanted to share. Go ahead, Yogeshwar.
Sure. Yes, that shows the aspect of fluidity there. Bhakti yoga, where we were, is Sharanagati, even to an idol or even to a murti. That the main aspect there is the Sharanagati that comes. Because what happens is when you have to leave your identity, what you are, you want to see something on the other side. And what Bhakti would say is that you're going to have your friend Krishna on the other side. You're going to have your love Krishna on the other side. You're going to have maybe whatever you've put Krishna as in your life. However you love Krishna in your life, he is on the other side. When you leave your identity, you get to him. Now, in this subtle way, you see how it brings you to leave your identity totally. And then when you grasp onto Krishna, you'll see the ultimate within him because you won't be able to grasp it. The main thing would be leaving your identity. And then after that, what happens will be just the ultimate. The unmanifest will unfold itself. Another point about Bhakti Yoga is the love aspect. And the way you love Krishna is not important. Loving Krishna is important, whether it is as a friend or it is as your love itself of life, or even as a father or a son. However you'd like to love Krishna, Bhakti Yoga would accept it. The main point would be loving Krishna. And then that love would automatically come into your love, into your life, because everything has Krishna. Everything around you has Krishna within him. And you will just show utmost love, even with your action, even with anything that you're supposed to do, and then anybody you interact with. Krishna will always be within that essence. It is like, there was this story that when a sage was walking, there was a beggar around, and then he asked the sage, "You're also just like me. Like, I also don't have anything. You also don't have anything. So why are you called a sage? Why are you worshipped?" Then the sage told the beggar that, "I'll tell you when the time comes right. Just walk with me." And then they walked some distance, and then they saw there was a female, like there was a lady who was, previously in those times in India, you'll have to go like kilometers to get water from a well, and then you come back home. And then the sage pointed to the lady who was coming back home from the well. And the sage asked, "What do you see in this lady?" And the beggar said, "She's just a lady, normal, anything." And then the sage said, "No, just look at her. There is a smile in her face, like on her face. And even though she's carrying the pots on her head, before there was this style of carrying the pots on your head. There are 2 pots or 3 pots on your head, yet you do not need to touch them because you're going to have the 4th pot on your right hand and the 5th pot on your left hand. The 3 pots on your head, they just move with you. And it was a normal thing on those times of the day. So the sage told him that, look at all these pots. Do you think her attention is not there? The beggar said, yeah, her attention needs to be there. If not, the pots will fall down. And why do you think she has a smile on her face? Like, what is she looking for? What is she going towards? And the beggar said, probably she's just going home. Why is she happy? Then the sage said, not just going home. She's going home to her husband because she loves her husband. She's going with all that love, not just the water, but she's going with the love to her husband. And that makes the difference. That love in the action makes the difference. Whereas if it's any other person, where you're going to get water from 1 or 2 kilometers from your home, you'd be frustrated. You'll be like, why do I need to do this day in, day out? Why do I need to get water? Isn't there a better way to do it? And for that person who is doing it, it's just with the utmost love. Now, with that love, what happens? One is the action that is talked about in chapter 2. That which is without, you do not think about the fruit of the action. You're totally into the action. Love can bring you in that state. While we'd be contemplating about how not to think about the fruit, but a person who loves would automatically not think about the fruit, would only think about the action right now. That's automatic for love. It's automatic for bhakti. It's not something that you have to do it logically, or it's not something you have to teach. You just stay in such an environment of bhakti yoga and it happens. It just fruits out. Another aspect of bhakti yoga is how it gets you towards the center. So one, you get to know how to do your karma without the fruit, just the action itself. And another aspect is getting to the center with love, with utmost love. So what you love, which would be Krishna, would be put at the center because he is the center of everything. When you're looking at the center of everything as Krishna, even though he is outside there, or even in philosophical terms, even though you put his murti in your mind, still he is out of the center, he's at the peripheral. What happens is when you concentrate so much on one particular object, which would be Krishna, and putting Krishna in bhakti yoga rather than putting any other thing brings the qualities that we have talked about before. That's a given. But it also brings the qualities of concentration as well. You're able to concentrate on one. When you're able to concentrate on one, you slowly feel that every other thing on the peripheral just slides away. You don't need to take one by one away. Everything just slides away. You're able to concentrate on one because you love Krishna, even though you've kept him as an imagination at the peripheral. Yes, but that helps you concentrate. That helps you put all your vritti, all your mind into one place. When you put your mind into one place, everything else of the peripheral will slide off. When everything else at the peripheral slides off automatically, then you realize that Krishna who is there and Krishna who is at the center is the same. Because we've talked about this. When you look at the center, when you find Brahman within the center, then you'll find the Brahman within everything else. When you find Brahman at the peripheral here in Bhakti Yoga, then you'll also find the Brahman within the center. So normally it would be taken as an opposite direction of normal Jnana Yoga. But then you see that the ends match. When you're talking about the peripheral and you see Krishna there, then you also get to the Brahman within yourself. Another aspect of Bhakti Yoga is also one thing about walking on the same path. The Shastras of Bhakti would be described in a certain way, whereas the Shastras of Jnana Yoga will be described in another way. One thing to note is, for example, you're climbing up a mountain. Yes, you'll see the beauties of the mountain. You'll see the landscape below you as well. The way you describe it matters on your personality and also matters on the path you're taking. So normally, if we would say one person is walking on the same path, if he's a poet, he will describe the trees as if they're just going with the wind, they're bowing down to nature, and they just want to give out fruits. And when a scientist is going through the same path, he looks at the tree, there's a different explanation to it. He will describe it differently. It is about going through the same process, getting to the center, but then you're doing it in such a different way, describing it in a different way. Now, even though you see the same thing at the end, which would be the center, you get to the center, you'll describe it certainly different, because now the only thing you're left with is love in Bhakti Yoga. So you'll describe it only with love. You'll describe it with utmost reverence, like that is what you're supposed to get to. Not because you need to get to it, or there's a want, or there's a luxury, but just because you love. And that gives you the essence of Bhakti Yoga. It brings you towards the acceptance that even though Bhakti Yoga, from the outside, it looks like it's only focused on the peripheral, or it is only focused towards love, but there's this certain way whereby they tweak it a little. They have this way of doing love, of having love, and then they take it to the ultimate. Normally would say emotions are not something you should get into. But what Bhakti Yoga does is get into the emotion, get into love, and then get past it. It is like in Jnana Yoga would say, get into buddhi, like get into the intellect, and then you'll be able to get past it. So in Bhakti Yoga, it's you get into love, and you'll be able to get past it. You don't run away from your emotions. You get into your emotions. Then you get past your emotions. And when you get past your emotions, you get the essence of bhakti. That's why bhakti is not called prema. That's why bhakti is not directly translated only to love. Bhakti is translated to unconditional love or devotion, total devotion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yogeshwar. That was wonderful. Folks, if you have any comments, if you have questions or any brief comments, please go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. We'll take a few comments or questions, and then we will continue with the conclusion of the Bhakti Yoga 13 to 20. I'm going to give another few seconds if anybody wants to ask any question or make comments. For reading, David, can I request you to read? It's going to be from 13 to 20. Go ahead, David. Oh, you can unmute now.
Okay. 13 to 20, chapter 12. That devotee of mine who is non-envious, possessing benevolence towards all living entities, compassionate with no sense of proprietorship, free from false ego, equal in distress and happiness, forgiving, the always content one, perfecting the science of uniting the individual consciousness with the ultimate consciousness, self-controlled with unflinching determination, dedicating mind and spiritual intelligence upon me is very dear to me. One from whom any person is never disturbed, and one who is never disturbed from any person, and who is freed from the mundane pleasures, anger, fear, and anxiety, such a one is very dear to me. That devotee of mine who is desireless, pure, expert, free from worry, free from agitation, unconcerned with any mundane endeavor, such a one is very dear to me. One who rejoices not, dislikes not, grieves not, and desires not, impartial to both what is auspicious and inauspicious, engaged in devotional services, such a one is very dear to me. That person who is equal to an enemy as well as a friend, also in honor or dishonor, impartial in cold, heat, happiness, and distress, exempt from attachment, equipoised in praise or repute, contemplative before speaking, satisfied with whatever comes on its own accord, not attached to domestic life, fixed in determination, and engaged in devotional service, such a one is very dear to me. Endowed with resolute faith in devotion to me, those who worship this nectarian path of righteousness as described, these devotees are very, very dear to me.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Next up is Yogeshwar. Yogeshwar, go ahead.
Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankara samadukha sukhakshami. Krishna is now going to talk about qualities of a bhakta, qualities of such a person who has fallen into bhakti. And bhakti is not something that you do per se. Bhakti is something that happens to you. And that bhakti, when it happens to such a person, how does he become? What qualities does he have? What qualities does he possess? Krishna here is saying, Adveshta sarva bhutana. There is not even a little part of him that puts him away from all the other living beings. Because normally, anger would put us away from any other living being, or jealousy as well would part persons. Here Krishna is saying Adveshta sarva bhutana. Whether it's a person, whether it's any other living being, that person does not have even the smallest of dvesha, which is rivalry, which we could say. Maitra karuna evacha. That person would have not only that he doesn't rival with any other living being, or there's this aspect of I do not like this person, or even I do not like this aspect of this person. Nothing like that. Not only that, but then maitra, which is mitrata bhav, friendship, comes automatically there. He is like friends with everyone. Whether it's a person you do not like, or any other living being that we could talk about. Maitra and karuna evacha. Karuna here is not only that you're just as a friend, because a friend will help when a person is in need or when the person asks. Karuna ras is that when, even though a person is there or not, even though a person is asking or not, you're unconditionally loving them. You're unconditionally just loving the whole universe. Even though a person is there or not now. Let's just take an example. How our love is conditioned by a person is when a person is there, love flows from the center, or love flows from within ourselves towards that person. What happens in this state is not only when a person is in front of you, or not only when you think about a person or a living being, that love flows. Love flows continuously from the center. And that is also an aspect of the center. It is fully loving towards any aspect of the peripheral. How would put it in terms of the manifest and the unmanifest is, the unmanifest loves the manifest in a way that the manifest itself is a way the unmanifest shows itself. It's a way you're supposed to know the unmanifest. And if the unmanifest wants to show love to you, what would it do? It will bring something to the manifest. Nirmamo, nirahankara. There is no mamta. No. Two things here. Nirmama, nirahankara. Nirmama meaning that mama, meaning mine. There is nothing like mine. Mine meaning that anything at the peripheral, you're not saying this is mine. This is something I should get attached to. When mine comes, yours also comes. So if you are attached to something, there will be somebody else who would want to take it away. Or it may be somebody else's property, something that belongs to somebody else, and then you like it. So this is mine, brings that aspect of this is yours now. But if you think about it, everything is for everyone. There's nothing that the unmanifest has made only for you. The unmanifest has made for everyone. And then nirahankara, in relation to the nirmama. Nirmama means there is no bhava of mine. Nirahankara means there is no bhava of me now. Qualitatively different. Because sometimes you can say, oh yes, I will allow to share what mine is. And at the peripheral, that person would feel like, yes, he's nirmama. He doesn't have that aspect of mind. But to become nirahankara from within, there is no me now. When there is no me, there is no you, essentially. When I dissolves from the within, it becomes one with that great ocean that underlies the whole universe, that underlies all of existence. And when that I dissolves into the ocean, you certainly realize that there's also no the other. It's all one. So nirahankara, sama dukha sukha kshami. And only such a person can become the same within, whether sorrow comes to him or happiness comes to him. He becomes like an ocean. In an ocean, however many rivers flow into it, it will never say, no, river, do not come, because you, as a river, you bring dirtiness into me, you bring filth into me. The ocean will never say that. What the ocean will do is just stay as it is. And then certainly you'll realize that what the ocean does, all the filth just goes onto the bottom and then is washed onto the seashore, the beach. So itself, it is self-sustaining, whereby it removes all the dirt from within itself, but it doesn't stop anything from coming within it. Whether it's a river which is pure water, or it's a river that has gone through so many plains around and across, and then it comes into the ocean with all the sand or all the filth that it brings together. The ocean never says no. And Shami as well. Not only that the ocean doesn't say no, it is sama in sukha and dukkha, but it's Shami as well, whereby it forgives everything. That person has this essentiality, this quality. Anything that has been done wrong, one aspect of Shami that we normally know is forgiveness. So what happens in forgiveness is somebody does wrong to you, you feel that he has done wrong to me, you feel bad, and then there's a time where you feel I should forgive him. That is one explanation of forgiveness. Another explanation of forgiveness is at that same time, when he's doing bad to you, yes, you feel it, but then you also see that that person has a point in it. That is why you forgive him. That is also forgiveness. The third aspect to forgiveness is he does something to you wrong, whereas you've done nothing wrong. It's not your fault at all. He does wrong onto you. And just as you are, you do not even feel anything wrong about it. So the first thing Krishna said is sama dukkha sukha. You do not feel anything wrong about it, even though he is saying wrong onto you, whereas you've not done nothing wrong. You've done nothing wrong, so you do not feel bad about him telling you anything. And forgiveness just arises from within, automatic. In that aspect, there is no aspect of forgiveness like we would like to know in the first two definitions of forgiveness. Here, forgiveness has totally a different quality. You're not just forgiving from the outside or the peripheral. There is this essential quality of yours that is always forgiving because you never feel wrong about the other person. And there's utmost karuna for that other person. There's utmost love for the other person. There was this quote I was reading the other day about sannyasis, about how sannyasis were supposed to live in those days. They were told that when somebody does something wrong to you, even though it is not just with words, but physically as well, like maybe beat you up or something, what you should do is not only forgive them, but also think right about them, to think how they also get onto the path of righteousness. So you do not leave forgiveness only up to forgiveness. You take it further. You take it to the extremes whereby you're thinking good about the other person. And when can you think good about the other person? When yourself, your sama, sukha, dukkha, you've not felt anything wrong about it. The only wrong you feel about it is that the other person has not yet reached the path of righteousness. When he reaches the right path of righteousness, then you will feel, yes, I have done something good to him. Santushta satatam yogi yatatma dridhanishchayah mayarpita mano buddhir yo mad bhakta same priyah. Because of all these qualities, and you can see how these qualities are just going deeper and deeper. Santushta satatam yogi. Because it doesn't have anything to do with the peripheral now. Your sama, dukkha, sukha at the peripheral. And you're getting all the love that you need. all the essence of life that you need from the center. You're santushta, you're tushta. There's nothing that you want out of the peripheral now. Because asha, which means any desire from the peripheral, will always bring this regressive action, whereby you're going to go behind the desire, and when the desire is fulfilled, again you'll have a greater desire towards the peripheral. Whereas when you're focused on the center, when you're focused on love, you're always santushta with what you have. Santushta satatam yogi, yatatma dhrida nischaya. Whereas you're satisfied with all that you have, which is the center. Yatatma dhrida nischaya. It's not that you're doing nothing now. It's not that when you've reached the center, you're just seated and doing nothing, or you're just sleeping and you're doing nothing. Yatatma, you're always going to do more. You're striving on to more. You know, one part here in the same verse whereby Krishna can say santushta, and then Krishna can also say yatatma, whereby in our life would always feel to do something great would need a desire. To do any action, however trivial it could be, even moving yourself from here to the kitchen, it needs a desire within itself. But where Krishna says, first become santushta, first become satisfied with what you have, at the peripheral and at the center. Then you are yatatma. You are doing all the actions that are needed. You are striving even for more than other people are striving. Dridha nischaya. At that point whereby you've reached the center and you have this determination now, there's this dridha nischaya. What happens at this point is, because you focused from the center to the peripheral now, anything you do at the peripheral would not be according to the desires. As your desires change, normally you do not have concentration at any one point. If you're focused on this, on the center, if you're focused on love as a quality, nothing at the peripheral disturbs you. You are already satisfied. And at this point, when you want to concentrate on one thing at the peripheral, any one thing, you can have a steady concentration on that. When you say, I want to do this, you will do it. One is that definition. Another of dridha nischaya, of steadiness, is however much the peripheral changes, when you're at the center, you're steady. When you're at the center, the bhakti itself, the love itself will keep you at the center. And will always bring you back at the center, because normally we talk about being at the center, but as ourselves, we are not at the center right now. So what happens? What does dridha nischaya mean now? What does steadiness mean? What does determination mean? What it means is you have that steadiness of getting to the center, have that determination of getting towards the center now. And when you have a glimpse of the center, even though you're moved occasionally to the peripheral, you have the determination of going back and then going to the peripheral from the center, not by any other forces at the peripheral, not that you're being pulled by the peripheral, but from the center. Now you reflect your light towards the peripheral. You illuminate the peripheral from the center. Mayar pita mano buddhi. In bhakti, one thing we need to know is your mind and your intellect should be given to the other. That is love. When you're not focused on what I am getting from the other, but you've just focused on how I can love the other, because it's unconditioned here. When it's unconditioned and you love the other, you're not going to expect anything back. There's no expectation here. It's only that I want to love Krishna. I want to have as much bhakti as I can towards Krishna, not thinking about anything back I'm getting. And another aspect to that is mana and buddhi, meaning your mind and your intellect, are given to Krishna. Normally we'd feel that logically it should not be, because we would want to walk by our logic. We would want to walk by our mind, where our path is, would want to walk our path. Whereas here Krishna is saying the opposite. He's saying, give your mind and your intellect to me. One thing I would like to point out here is, normally we walk our path, yes, using our mind and our intellect. When we get to the end, you realize that you have to become one with the ocean. That is the last point in your journey. And when you're becoming one with the ocean, there is not your intellect. There is not your mind. It is just facing reality as it is. So at that point anyway, at that last point, you have to leave your mind and you have to leave your intellect. Because wherever there's your mind and your intellect, me is always going to be there. Your ahankara is always going to be there. The self, the ego is always going to be there. At that last point, you have to leave all that. Whereas somebody in bhakti would say, why leave it at the last point? Since Krishna can take me the whole way, I am willing to leave my ahankara. I'm willing to leave my ego at this point. When you leave your ego at this point, then your mind and your intellect automatically is given to Krishna, is given into that vast ocean at this moment. So in a way, what we are waiting for to do at the last moment, a person in bhakti or a person in love does it in the first moment, because that's their first step to show that I love you. I should not be there. Mad bhakta same priyaha. Krishna here is saying not just that his qualities are like that. Yes, he is like that. But then he is mad bhakta. He is my bhakta. Continuing his sentence, Krishna says, Same priyaha. I also love him. He loves me, I love him back. Yasmanno dvijate loko, lokanno dvijate chayah, harshamasha bhayodvegayit, muktoya sachame priyah. Yasmanno dvijate loko. Lokanno dvijate chayah. Twofold. A person who does not bring suffering to the outside world, and he is also not affected by the suffering of the outside world. He's not also suffering from the outside world. So a twofold, whereby you're not bringing suffering to anybody else, and you're also not suffering from anybody else, meaning you have to totally be detached from the peripheral. You have to be totally at the center for this. When can you do that? When can you not bring suffering to the peripheral? When you love the peripheral. It's not only about detaching. When we talk about detaching from the peripheral, it means that we normally think about it like we have to get like a sword or something and then just cut all these attachments towards the peripheral. One thing done. But then Krishna is always talking about this bhakti that you should also have, this love that you should also have, because the peripheral is part of existence. The peripheral is part of the center. The manifest is part of the unmanifest. When we understand that the ultimate resides in the manifest as much as it resides in the unmanifest, that is when we do not bring any suffering to the world. When we are in our ahankara, when we are always thinking about I, when we're making the boundaries, and all the boundaries that we make always bring the suffering. Because when there's a boundary, you're going to see that somebody is evading your boundary, coming into your boundary, or somebody is trying to break your boundary. And when that happens, you cannot stay steady. You are going to suffer from that. So how do you not suffer from that? When you leave the boundaries from the start. When you say, the boundaries is not what I am. I am something as vast as the ocean. Harsha marsha bhayodvege muktoya sajame priyaha. You have to become free from all these bonds of the peripheral. Harsha, meaning happiness. All the anand, all the happiness that you can get from the peripheral. Yes, it is. It is happiness. And normally, you see, what would happen is, would like to get detached from what we call sorrow of the peripheral. But who would want to get detached from the happiness? Whereas Krishna is saying, from both, you have to get detached. Whether it's harsha or it's amarsha, or is it bhaya, which is fear. There's no fear that comes from the peripheral. Because when you're at the center, there's nothing to fear about, because you're not attached to the peripheral. And then udvegai, mukta. You have to be free from all these bonds. Udvega, meaning that you suffer even the littlest, like even the least, from the peripheral. There is that unsteady part of you, whereby the remote control of your emotions or your mind is in the hands of the peripheral. If the peripheral just taps a button, you're unsteady now. So that should never happen. The remote control of your own being should be in your own hands. And that happens when you're at the center. Krishna again here is saying, yes, sir. Who is so? Me priyaha. That person is also me priyaha. He's also somebody I love. He is my beloved. And when we normally talk about anybody else saying this, that, oh, I like you, I love you. But when Krishna is saying this to a person who loves Krishna, I just see Arjuna at this point in time. Arjuna is being said these words like, that person is my beloved. And the love Arjuna has for Krishna. And Arjuna would be like, yes, if that person is loved by Krishna, then I have to be that person. If that person is the person that Krishna loves, then I have to gain all those qualities. That makes you gain the stride towards the center as well. And when you're at the center, you're feeling all this love. from the center, you realize that the love, because normally now when Krishna says Sacha me priyaha, what we would say is, oh, now the Lord is also having distinctions, is also separating, like Ya mad bhakta sa me priya. He who is mine, he is my beloved. Those who are not mine, they're not my beloved. Now you see that distinction here. But what Krishna is trying to say here is, I am like rain. Huh? On the highest of the mountains, I shower my love at the same pace. And whether it's a valley, I shower my love at the same pace, just like rain does. But what will happen when you're so full of ahankara, like you're the mountain now, you'll not be able to contain the love that Krishna pours upon you. When will you be able to know the love that Krishna pours upon you? Is when you're a valley, when you've removed all the ahankara from within you, when you've removed all the ego from within you, is when you can be able to get the love within you and contain it. That is when you realize that, yes, the Lord also loves me. It's not that he doesn't shower himself on people who are mountains, like who are full of the ego. He showers just the same way, but they do not have that part of them that can contain the love. It just flows off. Anapeksha suchir daksha udasino gatavyatah sarvarambha parityagi yo mad bhakta same priyah. Anapeksha. He does not have any desire that somebody else or something at the peripheral should do something for me. He does not have any desire that I should be fulfilled with anything else apart from who I am. He does not have any expectations from the peripheral or from anybody else. Suchir Daksha. When we look at a person in love, we do not see Daksha. Daksha means intelligent. Huh? We'd normally feel like if you want to be in love, you have to leave everything out. That person will totally become like adaksha, meaning he will become unintelligent. But Krishna here is saying that is intelligence. He becomes intelligent. He who does this is intelligent. Why? Because from the Upanishads, from the Gita, or from any other path that is taken in Indian philosophy, Indian religion, what happens is he who gets to know himself is the most intelligent, not the person who knows at most about the peripheral, not the person who can make the distinction at the peripheral, but the person who gets to know the center is intelligent. And that person is also Suchi. Yeah? In a way, Suchi could mean both intelligence and cleanliness, both. So since Daksha is already here, we'll take Suchi as cleanliness, whereby you clean yourself up. What you are not, yeah? You leave that out. You become pure in your essence. Only the Atman, only the Brahman is left. All that which is not you, which is the peripheral, is left out now. And then you see that the sun is always within you. And when the sun is there, what can be impure at that point? When you realize the sun is within you, what can be without light? What darkness can be within you? Nothing. Because ignorance stays there where there's no light. Impurity stays there where there is no light. Where there is light, these two do not stay. Udasino gata vyata. That person is udasino. He does not, how Shankaracharya puts it, na kasyapi paksham bhajate. He does not, at the peripheral, he does not say this is good, this is bad. This is right for me and this is right for somebody else. This is what is. This is reality. This is existence. And he puts existence at most priority. When existence is there, for myself, the whole of existence is good. So I will not say this part is good for me and this part is not good for me. I will not say now that the center is good for me and the peripheral is bad for me, because I see the Brahman within the peripheral as well. I see the Brahman, how I see within the center, the same within the peripheral here. And such a person becomes gata vyata. There's nothing that can move him from that state of being at the center now. There's nothing that can move him away. There's nothing that can make him now, if he is, let's say this is like the whole of samsara is like moving on a small rope. You know how in the circus they will move at a large height, they will move on a rope. They'll what would I say, like walk on a rope. Yeah, they would walk on a rope that is put up high. Would normally see that in a circus, but let's see this as an example here. The whole world is like walking on that rope. So what gata vyatha means is you not fall on any side of the rope. You not say that on this side is good or that side is good. What is that straightness you have to walk on that rope. There's no going on the right or the left. It's just walking on the straight path. And you realize that when you do not have that much practice of walking on the rope, you'll normally fall on the left. And when you're falling on the left, you'll put more emphasis on the right because you do not want to fall on the left. So that is the constancy of samsara. That is what you normally do in samsara. When you feel, oh, I've done so much work, then you'll go to rest. When you feel that, oh, I've rested so much, you'll do some work as well now. And normally even, this is subtle, but if you realize this, when you've done so much good in your life, or during the day, what happens at some points during the day is, oh, I've done this much good. This much bad is not bad. Like, you can allow this much bad in my life. Like, this is also part of life. That's what you'll normally do. Like, when you go to the left, you'll also feel like going to the right as well. But what gata vyatha means is nothing like that. It's not about balancing just the right and the left. Gata vyatha means just walking straight on the center. And when you have that practice of walking straight, there's also nothing that can take you to the right and the left. You're just so straight there. Sarva Rambha Parityagi. Again here, Krishna says, he leaves all the action aside. So Arambha, meaning you want to start to do something. You want to start to do any action here. So any action is left aside. What he will do is that person will just be at the center. What Sarva Rambha Parityagi means is when you start any action, normally as we begin the action from the peripheral. That's our beginning. That's our start. Certainly, Krishna is saying, do not start. Because if you start right now, what will happen? You'll start from the peripheral. What you do is just allow yourself to get back into your swabhava, to fall back into your swabhava. And to fall back into your swabhava is just like gravity. What you need to do is just leave everything else. And you'll just fall back to your swabhava. And your swabhava is the ultimate. When you do that, you've fallen back into the center. Now, when you're even doing any action, you won't feel the weight of the action. There's no beginning there. It's just a normal pace in your life. There's no beginning and end of an action, because when you begin an action, you'll say, oh, it's good if that action ends. Sometimes even in our life, we normally have this urge to begin an action. When we're doing that action over and over again, then we feel like, oh, it's good if this action ends now. So when you've started something, you'll feel like ending it. When you're walking from the center, you've not started anything, and there's no ending anything. Action just flows continuously from the center to the peripheral. No start, no end. When you begin something, you'll have to end it. This is what Krishna is saying. And normally what is taken in this aspect is, do not do anything now at the peripheral. And that's not what is. Yes.
Yogeshwar, may I say something? I want to read the commentary of Sri Aurobindo. This is basically what is being captured here is Wu Wei in Tao Te Ching. You're saying that you're acting from the Tao. So you are not beginning things externally through periphery, but you're just acting with it. So he says, he has flung away from him all egoistic, personal, and mental initiative, whether of the inner or the outer act. One who lets the divine will and divine knowledge flow through him, undeflected by his own resolves, preferences, and desires, and yet, for that very reason, is swift and skillful in all action of his nature, because this flawless unity with the supreme will, this pure instrumentation, is the condition of the greatest skill in works. What then will be the divine nature? What will be the greater state of consciousness and being of the bhakta who has followed this way and turned to the adoration of the eternal? The Gita, in a number of verses, rings the changes on its first insistent demand on equality, on desirelessness, on freedom of spirit. Several formulas of this fundamental equal consciousness are given here. Thank you. You are on mute.
Yeah, sure. Here we see that Sarvarambha Parityagi doesn't mean nothing happens at the peripheral. What we see is everything that happens at the peripheral is a reflection of the center. That is when there is no beginning. That is when everything is just flowing as it should be. Yo mad bhakta same priya. He who is such is my bhakta. He is my devotee. And he is my beloved as well. Yo na rishyati na dveshti na shochati na kankshati shubha shubha parityagi bhaktimanya same priyaha na rishyati. He doesn't go on to the waves of happiness when it comes. And he doesn't go into the troughs of sorrow or unforgivingness when he is in sorrow. Na shochati na kankshati. There is not even a line or a thread of sadness in his life. And normally when we feel like, oh, we don't want sadness in our life, we always feel like we should strive for happiness. Krishna here is saying, no, none of that happens. Neither happiness nor sorrow takes him away. Nothing drives him away. Na shochati na kankshati. There is no desire in him at all. And when there is no desire within you, normally it would feel like shushka, it will feel like boring, and it will feel like dry when you think about it. There's no desire in this person. What will he even do with his life? If there's no desire in this person, how will he even be able to sustain himself, leave alone the people who depend on him? But this is after getting to the center. And when we talk from the center, you'll have action where there's no desire, where there's no desire of the fruit. Action just flows from within you. When that happens, when there is a distraction in the action, yes, you look for how the action is done well, but you'll not get distracted. You'll not get the sorrow of it. You'll not be filled with the sorrow of it. When the action is fulfilled, yes, you'll have that krishyati. Yeah, you'll have that, yes, what was flowing from the center has been fulfilled. That's it. You will not have this that I have done it. And when you have it that I have done it, then the happiness comes. When the happiness comes, you just flood away. You're drawn away by the happiness. And that doesn't happen when you're at the center. When action is flowing from the center. Shubha Shubha Parityag. Whether it is good or it is bad. Parityagi. He does not relate himself with either the good or the bad at the peripheral. Everything is just as it is. Even something normally would talk about like anger. Yes, it's also part of the peripheral. Yes. And you can accept it how it is. Or even though it is something like, let's say, maybe somebody hates you so much. Yeah? You can accept them as well. There's nothing bad about that, accepting them. Now, normally you would feel if we accept somebody who is bad into our lives, then won't he also make our lives miserable? Now, that's upon you now, because if you're not at the center, then you're going to get miserable anywhere by interacting with anybody at the periphery. Even a person you love today so much, after some years, you'll see that that person makes you miserable. I'm not saying necessarily, but that's what happens in life. So if you're not from the center, then even a person you love can make you miserable. And when you're at the center, even a person who hates you cannot make you miserable. Bhaktiman yasame priya. Such a person who has utmost bhakti within him, who has utmost devotion within him, he is my beloved. Samashatraucha mitrecha tatha mana pramanayoh Shitoshna sukha dukkheshu samasanga vivarjitah. Whether it is an enemy or it is a friend. In both instances, samaha. Now, Krishna is talking about all these different aspects of sama in this one small verse. We have talked about sama in all ways, yes. In the 5th chapter, it has come. In the 2nd chapter, it has been there. Krishna here is saying that such a person, even in an enemy and a friend, this is hard here. Because we had talked about this, within normal living beings, yes, it's fine. Like living beings are okay, non-living beings are okay. Even seeing the sama or that which unites the living and the non-living beings is fine. But now it's about a friend and an enemy. Somebody who you value as a friend and somebody who you don't even want to see as an enemy. Even both of them, you see that unity within them. You see the center within everyone. When your enemy comes in front of you, you can say namaste in the same way as you tell your friend. You can see the Brahman within them in the same way as you see the Brahman within your friend. You can see the center within your enemy in the same way like you see the center within your friend. Tatha mana pamanayoho. Whether somebody gives you utmost reverence, which is mana. Somebody talks about your good qualities. And then there are also some times whereby your bad qualities are talked about. And then you feel like, why even I do not have those bad qualities? Why are they talking about me like that? Yeah? All that. In this essence here, there is no up and down. There's nothing that moves you from the center. When you get mana, like when your good qualities are being talked about, yourself does not feel like I am above others. When somebody bows down to you because of your qualities, you do not feel I am above that person because you see the Brahma within that person as well. When somebody talks about your bad qualities, disrespects you, yes. So when he talks about your bad qualities in that way, what will it be? Will you now look for the evil within him? Will you say, oh, that person, I do not even want to relate with him? Or will you want to see the center within him? Will you want to see the Brahman within him? This is the state of a person who has reached, yes. As us who have not reached, what we can do is practice doing that. Practice looking for the center even within our enemies. Practice looking for the center even in the people who disrespect us. Shitoshna sukha dukkheshu. Whether it is cold or it is hot. Whether it is happiness or sorrow. In all those times, sama, sangha vivarjita. And Krishna here is saying samaha, yes, not just somehow from outside now, but from the inside, whereby no attachments are joined. Because nothing attaches you with the body, nothing attaches you to the peripheral, nothing attaches you to the other person from the peripheral. In that essence, you are sama with everything. Tulya ninda stutir mauni santushto yena kenachit Aniketan Sthiramatir Bhaktiman Me Priyo Nara. Tulya Ninda Stutir Mauni. So one aspect of that is Ninda Stuti Tulya. Whether somebody is talking good about you, or somebody is blaming you for something that you've not even done, or even something that you've done, let's say. Stuti there would be praising you for all the good qualities that you have. Tulya in both of them. Mauni, meaning he has this quality of mauna. Mauna meaning silence. And this quality of silence comes from within. You're silent from within, whereby your mind is not going places all around. Your mind is steady. And your mind is like that pond, let's say, which doesn't even have a ripple within itself. And when you search a pond which doesn't even have a ripple within itself, you can see that you are silent from within. Not only from the outside. Right? When you try to put silence from the outside, it never reaches within. But when you have silence from the within, and it is shown towards the outside, the silence within essentially means that silence of all the mind becoming at par. There's nothing it's meandering about. There is also nothing that it is thinking about apart from the center. And it is just so silent in there. And when, normally, because I've given an example of a pond, when even maybe a car just drives a pond, or maybe a person comes into the pond and then walks around there, here and there, even in that time, a pond will have all those ripples. But your mind should not have those ripples. Whatever comes from the peripheral, whatever comes from the outside, your mind should never have the ripples. It's just as it is. Santushto yena kenachit. He is always santushta. He is always in this bliss. Everything for him is efficient. For him, he is satisfied with what he has. Totally. Because when you reach the center, you realize that everything at the peripheral, it has the quality of dissatisfaction. Like you never get satisfied with anything at the peripheral. When you get to the center itself is satisfying. Whether you contemplate on the center for years and years, year in, year out, there is no dissatisfaction. It's always satisfactory. And it's always new and new. Aniketaha sthiramati. Bhaktiman me priyo naraha. So sthiramati here, he has that nischaya, he has that underlying steadiness within himself. That steadiness, it doesn't come by becoming rigid at the peripheral. That steadiness doesn't come by wearing so many masks at the peripheral, or trying to show that you are honest, or trying to be the best at the peripheral. That steadiness comes from within. And when that steadiness comes, nothing else from the peripheral disturbs the sthiramati that is there. Nothing else disturbs the steadiness that is there. And the steadiness I would put here is like the steadiness of the ocean. You know, normally you would think the ocean is not steady, but the much the ocean is steady, nothing else is. However many waves you would see on the ocean, yeah, that is the manifest of the ocean. And that is what we see. When we see the waves, we may think we have seen the ocean, but we have seen waves, not the ocean. The ocean is something different from the waves. The ocean is something much greater than the waves. The ocean is something much deeper than the waves. However many waves up or down the ocean may have, in itself, it has the steadiness. In itself, it stays as it is always. Bhaktiman me priyo naraha. Such a person who is having utmost devotion towards the center. Such a person who is having utmost devotion towards me is so much in love with me, is my beloved. Ye tu dharmyamritamidam yathoktam paryupasate shraddhadhana mat parama bhaktasteti vame priyaha. Krishna has called these verses from 13 to 19 Dharmyamritam. It is dharma. It is what is the center. What we know as dharma in normal terms is right action at the peripheral. That's fine. But in essence, when does that right action come about? That right action only comes about when it is brought about from the center. That right action is only right because it is connected to the center. Not only because it is right with other parts of the peripheral, no. And our description of right and wrong or dharma adharma is only based on the peripheral. What Krishna here is saying, all those qualities I've told you from 13 to 19, it is dharmyamamritam. It is the dharma. Dharma, dharyate iti dharma. That which is the essence of everything. That which supports everything. That from which everything else evolves. That is dharma. And what is that dharma like? It is like amrita. And I would say not even like, it is amrita. It is the only amrita. Amrita in literal terms meaning na mrita, amrita. Yeah? Where there is no death. And after you drink amrita, there is no death in your life. That is the normal amrita we know about the devas. But this amrita that Krishna is giving us, when your identity with your ego dissolves out, when you're following this dharma of right action from the center, when you're steady fast at the center, when you're always yathoktam paryupasate, as I have told you, those people who are always contemplating upon it, those people who are always going on, getting back to the center, yes, paryupasate. How will that person be? And what is he to me? Shraddhadhana mat parama. What will happen is you will have the utmost shraddha. Shraddha here would mean staying at the center needs, at first for us, it needs effort. Yes? When you have not seen the center at all, it needs utmost effort. When you have seen the center, even with some glimpse, then yes, we have to make that effort, but we see the fruit of it, like we see what comes about it, what comes about being at the center. And then when we get to the center, and we're never moved by anything at the peripheral, and then you look at the Shastras, you'll see that everything written in the scriptures, in the Shastras, is true. Everything that is written in the Gita is true. You know the essence of all the scriptures. When you know the essence of all the scriptures, you have this utmost shraddha. That is when, in real terms, you become astika. Not only by saying, oh yes, I believe in God, you become astika. Oh, yes, astika would mean a person who believes in God. And nastika would mean normally, in normal terms. Nastika would mean a person who doesn't believe in God, or would say atheism and that in Western terms. So in real terms, when do you know that God is there? When do you know Brahman is there? When do you know that the ultimate exists? It's not only when you contemplate it with the mind. It's not only when you show the logic behind it that you know that the ultimate is there. It is when you know the ultimate, you become one with the ultimate, you experience the ultimate. And when you experience the ultimate, one thing that happens is all the logic that you put about the ultimate, it just falls off, because nothing of that logic tells you what the ultimate is like. Yes, it was saying that the ultimate is, but all that logic was of the peripheral. It was based on the peripheral. When you get to the center, in true terms, you become an astika. In true terms, you get to know the essence of the scriptures. In true terms, you get to know that Brahman exists. Bhaktaste tiva me. Such bhakta, such people who are devoted to me. Here Krishna is giving the last one. Not only priya, ativa me priya. Ativa me priya. They are utmost my beloved. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Bhakti Yogo Nama Dvadashodhyayah.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. This was amazing, amazing. Folks, questions or comments? Go ahead and type exclamation mark. We'll start with Joe.
I just want to say thank you for the lecture. I mean, on so many different levels, especially at the beginning. It really kind of cleared up a lot of things when it came to Bhakti Yoga for me. The one thing I was really kind of struck by, well, one, I really liked how you laid out the limitations around logic, because sometimes we think our rational minds can kind of answer everything. And I think that that's perhaps not necessarily true. The other part is the idea of being steadfast and how that relates to desires from the center. But one of the things that you said that really kind of, I was kind of wondering if you could expand upon it. You said everything that happens on the periphery is a reaction or reflection from the center. Could you expand a little bit on that in the sense that what that exactly means? Because that's I'm sure there's something there very deep that I'm not necessarily making the connection right now.
Yes, so the peripheral is there, like it's the manifest that we talk about, and the center is like the unmanifest. How will the unmanifest show itself out to the world, to the universe itself? How will the unmanifest say, I love you? It's becoming manifest is when it shows that it loves the whole universe. And this is the way action should be done, from the center towards the peripheral. And then there's also another aspect, looking at the whole world in front of you, which is the part of the peripheral, because what we look at with our eyes is part of the peripheral. What you name is not the unmanifest. What you see is not the unmanifest. But what it is, even though it's at the peripheral, it is something that has evolved from the unmanifest. All the forms come from the function. Yes? So there's nothing about the form that doesn't come from the function. What you have to see is how the form and the function relate to each other. How that form is never void of its function. It always has its function within itself. And that form is always showing the function through itself. It's us who only see the form and stop at seeing the form rather than going beyond the form.
Beautifully put. Thank you. Next up is going to be Avanik, followed by Brian. Avanik.
Thank you, Yogeshwar, for the lesson on Bhakti Yoga, as well as chapter 12, verses 13 to 20. What I really got from it is releasing the ego is the key. For me anyway, it was the key for me, because the reason why we hold on to people, like we hold grudges against people that have wronged us, or when you were talking about forgiveness and why it's so hard to forgive, is because we haven't released the ego. And we feel like not only do we not deserve it, but that person doesn't deserve us, or so I think that was the key. I think I love the part about acting out of love and for no other reason. I think that releases the ego, because we feel like if a person doesn't love us the way we want to, that we should kind of release them or let them go. Or, if a person's not doing what we want them to do, or we feel like they should do, we feel like they should love us a certain way. But when you love with action, it doesn't matter, right? And that's also releasing the ego, like thinking that you deserve something, or that you deserve for a person to love you in a certain way, and it may not be that person's way of love. It may not be the way that person shows love. But if you're loving people just to love and to get close to the center, it really does. It's kind of still hard to grasp for me, if I'm quite honest, because if you love a person just for the sake of loving them, it really doesn't matter what they do or what they say to you. Like you were saying before, if you feel like this person's disrespecting you, it really doesn't matter, because you're going to show them love anyway. And it could just be as simple as not bad mouthing them, or not talking to them to other people, like gossiping, or it could just be as simple as just wishing them well and not focusing on what they did to you, because that keeps you in a prison. So it was a lot of great things. Those were the two things that in particular. I'm going to save time for other people because I know it's late, but I could go on for like hours on what I got from today. So thank you, Yogeshwar. Thank you, Shrikant, for the poem. It was great. It was awesome. And for the commentary. So thank you both.
Thank you, Avanik. I just want to comment on one thing. Thing that stands out for me from all these verses is that this is love of existence itself. This is saying it's a fundamental yes to life itself, to existence itself. So it is not about your response to particular things. It is saying just yes to existence, saying yes to thou, and seeing everything as manifestations of it. And so it is operating at that level. And you're simply saying that I'm in love with existence, I'm in love with life, I'm in love with Krishna, which is the center and its manifestations. And when you have that profound devotion, and it's a combination of first acceptance and devotion. So it's a deep acceptance of what is, and it's deep devotion to that, because you're not, even the negative things, you're seeing it not as that, but as manifestations of the unmanifested. It's like a particular phase of it. And because your mind is focused on this entire causality from the center to the manifestations, that's all you're focused on. And that is what you're saying, this is reality as is, as it is. And you're responding to that with acceptance, devotion, and love. So that is the heart of Bhakti Yoga as I see it. Next up is Brian, Rupali, and Joe. Brian.
So I talked in an earlier session about my bodily reactions to these presentations, and I was having all bodily reactions again today. It was amazing. I felt it started in the, I have to say, I don't know why, but I'll tell you, it started in the base of my spine and it came up through my chest and up my arms into my hands like this. It was tingling, it was electric. And then that was like towards the middle. And then afterwards, I felt like from my shoulders up into my head and a tremendous sense of clarity. And then I could just listen to Yogeshwar, and just, it was like floating along with what he was saying. It was no more puzzlement and puzzling. It was just enjoying. And then as finally what Srikant said, the only thing I'd say is I have a feeling not just of the love, devotion, but celebration of this, of all manifestation of the unmanifest.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautifully put, Brian. For example, that poem that I read, that has the sense of wonder. And it's looking at every aspect of Krishna. And it's like, it's filled with wonder of saying, wow, look at this. And wait a minute, he's also this, and he's also that. And I mean, it's like, and you're realizing that your mind cannot grasp it. At the same time, he's right there in front of you. So it's the definite and the indefinite. It's the manifest and the unmanifest at the same time. And you can see the myriad forms that are born of this core function. And your mind cannot fully get around it. And it is filled with this emotion of wonder. Thank you. Next up is Rupali.
Hi, Shrikant. Hello, Yogeshwar. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Some things that come to my mind. One is where Louis Sullivan, in his book Kindergarten Chats, he talks about how logic can only take you thus far. And beyond that is the creative imagination or the creative power. And I think that's the part about Bhakti Yoga, is logic can only take you thus far. And after that, it is your devotion, your faith, your belief that takes you to the next level. And earlier, Yogeshwar mentioned that you go through the path of bhakti and then you go beyond it. And what Louis Sullivan talks about is once you get to that part, he says, then let me just find it. He says, you might produce a completely logical result, so-called, and yet an utterly repellent one, a cold, vacuous negation of living architecture, a veritable pessimism. And so you could think logically, but then it really is very dry. But once you get into you're devoted to what you do, you understand and you find peace. So I think that's one thing that came to my mind. And the second one is about chapter 11. And I don't know if this is a good time to talk about it or not.
Go ahead, Rupali.
Okay, so last week I'd taken my students to a nature's camp. We stayed in a camping site for several days, and we hiked during the day, we hiked in the sun, we hiked in the rain, and it was really wonderful to see the children's experiences. So in chapter 11, where Krishna reveals himself, Arjun is scared at one point. And first, he was delighted to see all the forms, and then he was scared and really afraid. And I had not really understood that. But when I took the children hiking, these are 8 to 12-year-olds. And we went hiking on a trail on a nice sunny day, and the water was flowing. There were frogs and toads they could catch. They could see things at their level, and they had a great time. And they enjoyed the beauty of everything around them. The next day, it was raining. It was cold. It was dark. We went on the same trail, and the children were so scared because it looked different, and it was something beyond their comprehension. It was a dark trail. They couldn't hear the frogs. They couldn't see the toads. They couldn't find things that were familiar. And it occurred to me, oh, that is probably what Arjun felt. And that's what Krishna was revealing. There is this known part of the universe that we understand and we feel comfortable with. And then there's the unknown. And anytime we take a step in the unknown, we are scared, but it is the universe revealing itself. And so that was just an aha moment for me that I thought I'd share. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rupali. That was just magnificent. I want to connect those two things, the chapter 11 and chapter 12 here. People actually feel this feeling with nature. Louis Sullivan talks about this all the time. And many of us experience it in nature, of seeing the beauty, the unity, the complexity, and the simplicity of it in nature, in life itself. It's kind of lost in civilization many times, but people do feel it in nature. And it's that reaction that you have to nature, which is what is being pointed to here in devotion. It's simply saying yes to what is, that this is existence and I love it. That is the feeling that is there in nature. And yes, it has all the manifestations. There can be storms. And storms can be uncomfortable. They can be scary. There can be lightning. There is all kinds of things. And that too is part of nature. And you don't, like a person who loves nature takes this in their strides. And he doesn't say, he says yes to that too, seeing that that is a part of nature. So wonderfully put. Next up is Joe.
There was two things. I was just going to build on this idea of saying yes to existence itself, because in sitting and actually talking about forgiveness, sometimes people ask how we deal with no. You know, we didn't get our expectations. We didn't get what we wanted. We were tying ourselves to some outcome. But the answer to that is this yes, is this idea of embracing existence. And I actually like how it's been related to nature. And because actually having been out in nature just recently, away in the mountains, I had a similar feeling, is that you kind of feel connected to everything. And it's a yes, it's a very deep yes to existence itself. So that's it, you know, how have you expressed that? And that's love too. And that's unconditional love that you start to, it's a love for being itself. So it's a very, very deep as to what, you know, as to what it means to me personally. I mean,
May I
so
say something more?
please go on. Yeah.
This is the appeal of Taoism. This is what Lao Tzu does. What he's doing is that he's taking this from nature. He's drawing the inspiration from nature, and using the metaphors to say, bring this into culture. Bring this into your life. That's what Taoism is about. That is the appeal of Taoism. If you look at Taoism, you know, Tao Te Ching as a whole, that's exactly what it is doing. It knows that he knows that when you actually look at the water, you have that feel that water is just flowing. It is saying yes in its own way to existence. And be like water is saying that learn how Tao operates in nature and let that operate in you. Flow with it. Give up all these 10,000 things that you have, that you are attached to, and listen to the Tao. So it is doing exactly that. Go ahead.
No, I mean, that's a fantastic, I mean, I almost want to leave it there.
Sure.
I do want to talk
Please.
briefly. I think that something is that understanding Krishna as the ideal was very important for me this evening as well, is because it's also, and the importance of experience itself within that is with Bhakti Yoga. That's one of the distinctions that I would say that with difference than Western philosophy, is that it is about experience of being out in the world and actually understanding the world, and you know, you're gaining that knowledge. But again, if you're only using logic to understand the world, then you're limited to your experiences. But having Krishna kind of as an example and an ideal to strive for is really important. I mean, and I think that that's something that's kind of lost in modernity, if I may say.
Yes.
I don't like to put anything down, but essentially that's what it is. And so that's enables a transformation that allows you then to see the God in everyone else. I mean, it really, and that's kind of, this is the love that we're, with Bhakti Yoga. This is why it's so deep and so meaningful. I mean, so this is a very, and I know there's other connections we could make with Buber and all those other, connections but there's a lot here. This is very, very deep.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. And Rupali, I read a really beautiful poem in Marathi, so I'm going to send you.
Oh, I heard it, and it
Oh, you
was
heard it?
beautiful.
Okay, I did not
Yeah,
know that you were there. Okay.
I was just driving, so I couldn't talk. but
Okay. Very good.
I heard it.
Very
Thank you.
good.
That was
Wonderful.
lovely.
Yeah. All right. Yogeshwar, would you like to say anything?
No, nothing at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful, folks. This is so amazing. I've missed this so much. And this is so rich, so incredible. I just, I can't believe it. It's like, every time I experience this Gita meetup, there's just so much. There is just so much. And thank you so much, Yogeshwar. And thank you, Evanik, for filling in for me while I was gone. But I'm just delighted to be back. And next we are going to chapter 13. So we are going to start with chapter 13 tomorrow. So I recommend listening to the whole thing, reading the whole chapter 13 first, and then going from that. So thank you very much, everybody. See you soon. See you tomorrow, actually.
Yep.
I have to tell you, there are going to be amazing meetups on the weekend. On Saturday, Yasuhiko is going to be back, and he's going to be talking about new philosophy, new cosmology, and new ethics. So that's going to be something really spectacular. So don't miss that, 11 a.m. Eastern time. And then I'm going to be doing another very challenging meetup. I'm going to take my diagram and I'm going to look at the entire discussion of virtues in the 103 Great Ideas. I'd done a full presentation on it, summarizing all the questions raised on virtue and all the key answers given in the Western tradition. And I'm going to try to map it to our diagram. So that's going to be really good. That's going to be on Sunday at 2 p.m. So hope you will join us. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Shrikant.
Bye.
Welcome back.
Bye.
Bye.